Zion and we're at the south end. And originally we were going to drive up and go to some trails, and we saw the museum and went in there, and luckily we found out that you actually can't drive most of the park. So you have to come back to the visitor center and catch a shuttle bus. And one thing I do recommend is definitely coming early, just like everything else. But especially here, the parking is not that much. We had to drive around in circles for quite a while to find a spot. But luckily we're here, it's not a weekend, and we were able to find a spot. So really looking forward to it.
Hi guys, I'm Turtle.
And I'm Bear, and we are the Gallivanthropologists. We're a father-son team of traveling anthropologists, and we're going to be going around the world, traveling to over 100 countries in the next few years.
While we're doing that, we're going to promote cultural heritage and ecotourism and a little bit of food culture. So please like and subscribe and stick with us, because we got a really nice destination for you today.
Hey guys, I'm Bear.
And I'm Turtle.
And welcome to Zion National Park.
This was a pretty long road trip from Las Vegas, so you get up really early, like the crack of dawn, but you're really rewarded with a lot of really beautiful winding road through the desert Southwest, which is just mostly a bunch of gorgeous deserts with mountains and cliffs and things.
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful. And I think like once we actually got close to the park, that's when we started seeing, the pictures of what you expect from Zion, and that blew me out of the water.
When we got to the gate, it was really awesome because they are allowing military to come in free, and so you do have to show them an ID that says that you're a veteran, and then they'll give you all your maps and things, and you are off to the races.
And we looked at our map and saw that there was a museum not too far from the entrance. Figured we had to hit that first.
One of the first things that you're going to get to on the south side of Zion is the Human History Museum. And as an archaeologist, if you say human history, I pretty much can't resist it. So let's go in and check it out. Then maybe I can teach you a little better along the way.
Make sure that you don't miss out on the views, because right behind that museum is probably one of the best vistas in the park.
The museum takes you through about 1,500 years of history. First, you've got displays about the Anasazi people who were there about 1,500 to 800 years ago. And these were really interesting Native Americans. They're the Native Americans who would have built Mesa Verde and a bunch of these other areas, and you could see the draw for them with all the cliff faces here. They were replaced by the Paiute people, and those were the people that were there in the 1850s when Nephi Johnson and the first settlers came into what's now Zion National Park.
Yeah, so take a little time, walk around those 3 different stations, and then right in the middle of the museum is this awesome 3D model of the park. And that's really cool because not only can you kind of map out what hikes you want to do, but you can actually see the elevation of it, which helps you with planning.
And it's a very massive park. A lot of it is not easy to get to, and we definitely weren't going to cover it all in one day. And I usually like to check out the gift shops here because I have a bit of a t-shirt problem, and you'll get to see the one that I bought there later on in the show.
And before you leave, make sure you fill up your water. Zion National Park has spring water, easily accessible, very convenient. So take advantage of it. Originally we were going to drive up and go to some trails, and we saw the museum and went in there, and luckily we found out that you actually can't drive most of the park. So you have to come back to the visitor center and catch a shuttle bus.
So the building behind me at the Welcome Center is where you get your wilderness permits, but you have to do a bunch of paperwork in advance. They actually had somebody die here just recently during flash floods in one of the nicest hikes. We're gonna definitely come back and do those on our world tour, but for today we're just gonna do a couple of short ones. It's a little bit hot right now, and permits are hard to come by.
I'd say no matter what, say on the same one up and down so that way you can get everything.
Okay. While it's really ecological to take these buses up in here, we always suggest that the view out of the little cracks of the window that you have here really aren't the same as when we drove up to the point we were just at. But all of this is going to be new to us, so we're actually going to be seeing it with you guys because it's a lot clearer on the camera than it is out this little window. Or you could use your camera as a periscope like Brendan is doing right here. And it certainly exemplifies your view.
The main reason to go to Zion is obviously for the hikes. And the shuttle is actually the only way to get there. And so we passed a few stops and then we eventually got to our first stop, which was gonna be our first hike, and I was pretty excited.
One thing to remember is to wear your ultraviolet protective clothing and use lots of sunscreen because you don't want to ruin your vacation or come back looking like a lobster.
As long as the heat doesn't get too overbearing, we're gonna take 3 little hikes today and do the Emerald Pools trails. We're gonna save some of the bigger, more famous trails like Angel's Landing and the Narrows for when we do our world tour.
We're on our way towards both the lower and the upper Emerald Pools, and this first section is really paved and pretty popular considering that it's a Friday morning. It is the Friday before Labor Day, so I assume the next 3 days will be pretty horrible as far as crowds are concerned.
Yeah, I would imagine you're probably right.
And the first highlight of this hike is the lower pools and the cliff that goes along it, which actually has a waterfall, but at this point it was more about shade. There's not a whole lot of shade on this trail, so take advantage of that while you can.
Behind me is the lower Emerald Pool in Zion National Park, and it's called an emerald pool because of the algae that's in it. Gives it kind of a greenish tint. I don't know if you guys can tell from here, it's not that strong of a color in this lighting, but a cool thing about this spot is we're actually under this rock formation that produces a 100-foot waterfall, and it's only a little bit of waterfall here and there today, but during the spring, because of the snow melt, it's actually a really strong waterfall and it's really beautiful. So I'm definitely gonna have to come back in the spring, but even here in the late summer, beautiful time and really enjoying myself. And after the lower pools, you start to make your ascent up to the upper pools, and I love those natural stairs. And it might be a little bit more difficult than the rest of the hike, but it's still not very hard.
Every once in a while you get a little bit of shade, so I always slow down just to cool off for a minute. Plus, if you look up this way, holy moly, how beautiful is that? We brought plenty of water, but you definitely don't want to drink this unless you're desperate, because they say that the algae in it actually has a lot of things that aren't good for you. One thing that I will do though, every once in a while, I'm sure you don't get this in your ears. It's nice cool water. It feels really good on the back of your neck and on your wrists where you're going to cool down really fast. like I said, keep it away from your orifices, especially your mouth, unless you want to literally run down the mountain. And if you're always on Instagram like a good content creator, you've seen pictures of the Upper Emerald pools, and they're always gorgeous and really bright green. So we were kind of hopping to get over there, and we wound around, and when we finally got there, it was pretty, but it left me wanting more.
This is the Upper Emerald pools, and you can tell it's much more green than the other ones that we saw. It's still a little too muddy.
I'd like to be here, I think, during the wet season, not only for that waterfall that Brendan was telling you about, but also because if this is a little bit more full and the water is moving, I imagine that it does get that better green color. One thing that was nice here though, actually, was it was a great place to sit down in some shade once again and maybe have a snack.
And funny thing, while we were there snacking, we actually met a couple of Floridian hikers. And we talked to them for a little while. It's just funny how small the world is.
And on your way back, you can either backtrack or you can take an alternate trail that has some really amazing views.
When you go on the Emerald Pools hike, you can go all the way up to the upper pools and then come back down and go back to where you started. Or when you get to the middle pool on your way back down, you can take a right and get onto the Grotto Trail, which is a 2-mile trail, and it actually goes up above, and then it'll come back down. And if you see that bridge back there, that's where we started, so it should lead to the same spot. The views from the Grotto hike are amazing. The thing is, it's not exactly a shortcut, so it will take a little bit longer, but I think it was definitely worth it. Eventually, we did make it back down, hopped on our shuttle, and headed to our next stop. We're here at the Temple of Shinaba, and this is also the entrance to where you go if you were going on the Narrows. They have this cool sign here, and it shows you the possibility of flash floods, so definitely make sure you pay attention to that if you are going to go on one of these Riverside hikes. The one that we're going on is pretty short, it's just called the Riverside Hike, and there's some waterfalls, so it should be beautiful. It's supposed to be a pretty easy hike. Looking forward to it.
The nice thing about the river hike is that it's kind of more like a really nice little, almost ADA accessible river trail, and it winds down along the river. Pretty crowded though, because it ends in a very, very famous hike.
It's cold, huh? Nice.
And the water was pretty darn cold. It wasn't probably as cold as...
It was like a glacial melt. Don't you lie to yourself.
Oh man, it felt good, you know? And you got all these massages from the rocks on the bottom.
Yeah.
And you're walking
Relaxing
around.
massage, for
It
sure.
was super nice. Actually, in all reality, most people rent waterproof shoes and all these other different things because now you're actually hiking towards the Narrows, and it's a beautiful walk, and we did not have the waterproof shoes. So I was walking kind of gingerly and slow. Brendan looked like he was like ice skating and falling over every time he stepped onto a rock. He has really big flat feet.
The one thing that's nice on a hot day when you're doing the Narrows, or just this section of the Narrows, is that the water is nice and cool this time of year, and it's kind of like an ice bath for your feet, which will probably be sore from all the hiking you've been doing to see all the beautiful vistas that we have been seeing.
We expected to make it all the way to the waterfall. Didn't know there was so many spots where you had to actually get in the water. And our shoes are waterproof to a certain point, but we're also flying out tomorrow, so we didn't want to get our shoes all disgusting. So unfortunately, we're going to turn around before we get back to the waterfall. So if you guys do plan on going to the Riverside Hike at the end of the south side, definitely make sure to have some sandals or water shoes.
And we had enough at that point. It must have been like 110 degrees at least, and it's dry heat, they say, but I can tell you 110 degrees is 110 degrees. And so we got back into the car, got some air conditioning going, driving our way home. We were starving. So we decided to stop somewhere where they had an affordable and high-rated buffet.
I know it's a little out of the normal for us to finish a beautiful park tour with a parking lot, but I do have to point out the Chuck-A-Rama. I am a big fan of the Chuck-A-Rama. I have never been to a buffet nearly as good as this. I literally had to hunt down the chef and give her a kiss on the cheek for the clam chowder, because it was rockstar clam chowder, the best I've ever had. So if you do take our advice and you go to Zion National Park from Las Vegas on a day trip, make sure you stop here at the Chuck-A-Rama in St. George, and we hope that you find yourself here soon. And as always, find yourself on the journey.